My name is Jim Snyder with Quality Matters. I will be your host. My co-host on the line with me today is Diane Weaver. She's the CEO of Coursetune. And then our presenters today are Dr. Janette Isaacson and Grant Kirby from Oregon Institute of Technology. Someone said they're having trouble with audio, which leads me to this next slide. Here's how you can check your audio in the audio settings button. If you have audio, you can raise your hand, and that way I can see the bulk of the people have audio. If you're having trouble with audio, looks like people have found it, so that is good. I will say that the session is also being live captioned. And I put the link in here. So there's in the chat. So there's the URL to actually have to view the live captioning of the audio. So that is good. The next tab, if you have questions, we have a little questions and answer tab. Both Diane and I will be monitoring that. So if you have questions during the webinar, please put them in there and we will either answer them during the session or also get the the hosts, the people presenting in the webinar to answer it either during it or at the end. Most of you have already found the chat, but then there is a button for chat. If you want everybody to see it, make sure that you're sending it not just to the panelists, but to the panelists and attendees if you want everybody who is here in the webinar to see it. A quick slide about Quality Matters. Quality Matters is a global organization leading quality assurance in online and innovative digital teaching and learning environments. We provide a scalable quality assurance system for online and blended learning used within and across organizations. When you see QM certification marks on courses or programs, it means they have met QM course design standards or QM program review criteria in a rigorous review process. Quality Matters has over 1,100 institutions in 9 countries, used by higher ed, K-12, and other organizations offering continuing education and professional development. It's a scalable process led by credentialed reviewers that's based on feedback and continuous improvement. And QM certified courses are recognized as quality courses at the national level. Diane, do you want to give a brief overview of Coursetune?
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you for having us today, Jim. So Coursetune replaces hundreds of mapping and alignment artifacts, typically spreadsheets and Word documents. It's the software that helps your learning team plan and clearly communicate to others how your curriculum aligns to course, program, and institutional goals. With Coursetune, you can easily see outcomes and assessment alignment across your curriculum. You can share with your department how curriculum meets program goals. You can help students see and understand what they're learning when, how, and why. And you can log and prioritize changes for continuous improvement. You can also use Coursetune's robust course and program reports to help inform critical discussions around continuous improvement and your overall institutional effectiveness. Coursetune helps you design, collaborate, refine, repeat. Start harmonizing your curriculum with Coursetune today. Visit coursetune.com and request a demo.
Thanks, Diane. All right, Rico, if you want to start the recording. Welcome to the online learning webinars, Building the Alignment Triangle for Quality with Coursetune and Quality Matters. I'm pleased to introduce the presenters for today's webinar, Dr. Janette Isaacson and Grant Kirby from Oregon Institute of Technology. A brief bio on both of them. Janette Isaacson is Associate Professor at the Oregon Institute of Technology. She's worked as an ultrasound tech for many years and did research at the University of Washington before coming to OIT in 1994. She's a program director for 3 healthcare programs, including a master's in allied health, specializing in healthcare leadership. She's serving as the chair of the Commission on Assessment, on Graduate Council, and is a site evaluator for NWCCU. She's also earned her QM Teaching Online certificate. Grant Kirby is an associate professor at Oregon Institute of Technology. He came from the high-tech industry and has been teaching at OIT for 15 years. Till recently, Grant was a program director for the Information Technology program. His current focus is on improving the quality of online program courses for the IT program. He's been a peer reviewer, a QM peer reviewer since 2017, and has participated in 1 QM course review. So welcome, Janette and Grant. I'll let you get started. I will stop sharing and send it over to you guys.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, here we go. Hello, I'm Grant Kirby.
Hi, everybody. I'm Janette.
And we're here to share some things we've been working on over the last term or two. Our goal today is to share the story of our journey as we work to figure out how to create and improve on our online courses. Our collaboration began in a pilot of Coursetune at Oregon Tech, and we participated in a summer creativity grant that provided resources to explore the Coursetune modeling tool. More about that later. Some of our discoveries may be old hat to you, but we hope our story is useful to some. Let me say at the outset that for both of us, the primary mandate is to create real value for our students, as determined by them. While it's our job to create and design excellent courses, it's important for us to remember that it's the students who get to determine the value of that experience. It should be noted that we are not doing any primary research here. This was an exploratory project designed to find the right hypothesis for a potential research later on.
So our story, Grant and I sat down and we asked ourselves, are students really learning what we think they're learning? A follow-up question that we asked also is, do we have the evidence to know for sure that they mastered each learning objective in the class? We both had a genuine interest in making sure the students got the most out of our classes. So how we do that and the value that we are putting into our classes was really important to us. So we decided to take an empirical approach to our questions, and we had some surprises along the way, which we're going to share. Our initial thoughts, of course, were that our classes were great and positive, but as we began to model and look deeper into the structure of our classes, the answers get increasingly less clear. And what faculty are going to get out of this webinar is you're going to be able to identify ways to use QM, Coursetune, and student feedback for course alignment, articulate how course alignment improves student learning, and apply new models and strategies to assess live student feedback. So Quality Matters is our choice for a quality framework, and our primary focus has been taking the learning objectives and lining them throughout the course to ensure the quality and value of our courses. We are assuming that all of you out there are also QM believers like us. We have an alignment triangle that I want to introduce to you, and there are basically 3 building blocks to it. To keep it simple, there are 3 major points. The first is QM gives us the standards for online teaching, the alignment, and the clear course design to enhance quality in our courses. And we believe that. Coursetune gives us a visual tool to map it all out, compare across courses, and to go deep into the weeds of a course. Student data is the live feedback we get each week, and Grant and I are collecting both direct and indirect evidence as to whether we were successful at scaffolding the learning adequately, so the student masters each learning objective as we move through the course. So I'm going to start with Quality Matters. It's the first leg of the alignment triangle, and It's an important piece. So for this webinar, these are the parts of the QM standards that Grant and I are focusing on. I'm sure you all are very familiar with the QM standards. Throughout this webinar, we will be talking about these 6 alignment standards. These alignment standards take us all the way into the weeds of the course and reinforce alignment across our alignment triangle. Alignment standards focus on aligning the measurable program learning outcomes, course learning outcomes, module level learning outcomes with each other, with the assessments in the class, the instructional materials in the class, learning activities in the class, tools also that are used in the LMS. Grant and I came up with this course improvement, what we call life cycle. It's a continuous improvement model throughout the life cycle of a course. And how it works is the alignment goes across the course, and it can go as far as you want to take it. You can go all the way around the life cycle of a course, or you can just do part of the course. We've been trying to take it all the way around through the life cycle of a course. We typically start in the center and we look at our course learning objectives. Are they actually the skills we want the students to learn? Do they have measurable verbs? And are those verbs at an appropriate level for the class? Then we look at the alignment to the course description. Does the course description actually support the learning objectives? We look at the course activities. Do we have a variety of activities, a variety of opportunities of learning for the students, and do they align to the course objectives? We look at the course assessments. Do we have a lot of different ways to assess the students? And are we using as many valuable tools as we can in our LMS? So we look at all of that and we make sure that it aligns with our course objectives. Then in a live class, Grant and I, we look at the student scores related to the learning objectives. We look at those direct scores, whether it's a test or a paper, and we take direct measures. And we survey the students each week to find out what went well and what didn't go well for them. So we get their reflections back, and those are indirect measures. And I'll tell you, Grant and I are really surprised how much feedback we get from the students, especially on stuff that they did not feel went well. We share the results of our measures each week. So how they did on the direct measures, the test or the paper, and how they scored in their reflection questions, we share that back to the students. And then we begin to formulate a plan by the beginning of the next week. How do we fix whatever didn't go well? Whatever weak areas. Sometimes we add additional discussions, sometimes additional content, sometimes it's changing the grading rubric or rewriting a poorly written test question, but whatever we need to do that got missed, we reinforce it the next week to make sure that the students are mastering the learning objective. So quality matters is the first leg of our alignment triangle, very valuable. It's a core piece of quality design in online learning. Grant is now going to talk to you about the second leg of our triangle.
So the second leg of our alignment triangle is the modeling tool called Coursetune. This is an amazing modeling tool that allows us to fine-tune the detail of our course, or to zoom out to the university scale to see several courses at once. The ability to map important objective schema like my student learning outcomes, departmental objectives, industry standards like QM, onto a course or program is very cool. While this tool has a lot of great capabilities, we'll focus primarily on those that helped us dive into the individual course. So before we start talking about Coursetune, it's important to say that we're not selling anything. This is a tool we chose to tell this story. Our reason for evaluating Coursetune is to see how we could leverage this capability across the online classes for our individual departments. From the outset, we had some ground rules that we used to evaluate Coursetune. First of all, it had to ultimately reduce the course development and maintenance workload for faculty members. If we ask faculty members to do more work and take on more tools, and they're just not going to do it. We're all really busy, and so this was an important criteria. Two, we had to track student learning outcomes not only across a single class, but also across the program So this is a pretty big ask, and that was part of what we asked Coursetune to help us to do. So the third thing is that this tool had to be an efficient and effective way to communicate the course design and the outcomes across the whole group of different stakeholders. It turns out that when we develop a class, there's a lot of people interested in our class, you know, from the program director to the department chair to assessment people and on and on and on. So if we have a modeling tool, it needs to be accessible to all of those people. Otherwise, we're just kind of making busy work. Now, there was a fourth criteria that emerged the more we learned about Coursetune, and that was we wanted to be able to see the course design from the student's point of view. We don't often do that. You know, often we're the professionals and we know what the heck we're doing. So we create our classes and we design them, but often we don't have a way or a technique to be able to look at the course from the student point of view. So that's what we asked Coursetune to help us to do. So, excuse me, before we look at some of the screenshot, I can say, don't help me. I can do this by myself. Screenshots from Coursetune. I'll highlight some of the capabilities as it applies to our project. Initially, I moved existing courses into the model for review, and that was pretty cool. I could see just at a glance where there were holes in my designs. I'm going to have to turn my mic off and cough, I guess. The real power of Coursetune, though, comes from doing the initial design on the modeling platform to see where all these changes need to occur before I build the course. This top-down design methodology allows me to fix problems before they occur in the class, and that's pretty nice. The second thing is that as more and more terrific online tools begin to mature, it's going to be increasingly important for instructors, instructional designers, program directors, department chairs, and accreditation stakeholders to be able to start at the university level set of objectives, and then with a few clicks to drill down into the minute course detail. The really powerful thing about visual models is that they provide a cross-cultural set of communication primitives that make for clearer understanding across these various stakeholder groups. So it's often the case that some of our courses build on previous ones. However, it's not typically easy to see how the concept scaffolding works across courses and across the program. Now, assuming that I set up the model with those considerations in mind, the Coursetune models allow me to see those layers of scaffolding at various scales across the program. The fourth thing that I think is really important, and we developed an understanding about this over time, is how it affects assessment people. So we have assessment people at the university level, the department level, the program level, the course level, all trying to figure out what we're doing and if we're doing it right. And so these assessments are becoming much more important to us retaining our critical funding sources. So it's important that we figure out how to get assessment right. So a professional modeling tool like Coursetune should allow us to embed curricular strategies at all levels of the organization. With just a little instruction on using this intuitive interface, any of the assessment stakeholders can extract what they need to know about the course. It's kind of like companies designing their accounting system to make it easy for the auditors. Wouldn't it be cool if we could design our courses in such a way that it made it easy for the assessment auditors at all levels to review our course and our programs? That's kind of our goal here. So I'm going to take a huge risk here. Trying to do live demos is a crazy idea, but we're going to try it anyway here. So we got some videos. We'll see how this goes. But I want to show you, we had some static slides, and static slides just don't get it. So I'm going to show you some Coursetune interface slides here that I think are pretty cool. This is the only slide that we're going to have that talks about the full scalability of Coursetune. And when I click on this slide or this little video, you're going to see how I start from the left at the institutional level, and I'm able to drill down all the way down to the course level. So in this picture, I'm only going to show you the 5 classes that I routinely teach, but you can imagine we can organize this any way we want, right? So we get down, I can drill down to that individual class. And so the primary metaphor, object metaphor in Coursetune is this circular class map. And I have these classes set up as weekly modules because that's how I organize my class. So clicking on any one class in my picture lets me zoom into the class level. And so for this seminar, we're going to use my MIS 311 class as our example. So, oh, well, I'm going to have a hard time clicking through these maps. Okay, so when looking at an individual class, we structure the course in modules that represent our approach. Now, I use weekly modules. Some people choose modules or a way to organize their course differently, and you can certainly do that. We can also look at the course based on competency. So what I want to show in this slide is that when I pop down to this individual course, pink, there it goes, I go over here to the left and I can look at this as competencies that I want my students to have, or I can look at the weekly modules. In both of these cases, I'm able to assign the objectives to those, either to the competencies or the weekly modules. By clicking on this little weekly circle here, you can see my student learning outcomes that I have for that week pop up. I'll talk a little bit later about the numbers off to the right here represent my Bloom taxonomy and how I've assigned that to each of these. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide, the other next slide, that's it. Okay, so there are a couple things that we discovered in our journey that we think really help create a better product for our students. Now, I know that some of you sort of chafe at me talking about courses as products, but I'm afraid I have a marketing background, and our deliverables for the students are the same as a product for a customer. And so we want our customers to value our product. And so that's really what our goal is here. Now, I suspect that some of these ideas that we're going to talk about here are pretty common to most of you, but you know, for Janette and I, they were a bit of an eye-opener. So I'm going to go through them. So the first idea here is that it really helps to measure your course for objective success if your course was developed with those measurements in mind. Now, this implies that each element should have a specific alignment purpose, and you've considered how you will measure the achievement success of each student with respect to that objective. The second notion here is a little intimidating, actually, but it really gets at the heart of what we're trying to accomplish. And that's the idea of continuous improvement. Now, in the business community, we're all over continuous improvement, right? We have a huge volume of books written on this topic, but in academia, even though we teach business, we don't necessarily apply those continuous improvement principles to our courses. Now, maybe some of you do that, but it's not been a common practice for me. So continuous improvement in this context doesn't mean that we're just changing books every couple of years or, you know, refurbishing our resource list. It implies that you have a continuous measurements in your processes and that you act on those measurements right away to improve. Now, this is a heavy lift for most faculties. We are pretty much maxed out in every way possible, energy-wise, time-wise, resource-wise. So to sell the notion of continuous improvement, one must also believe that continuous improvement leads to more efficient course delivery later on. Otherwise, nobody would be silly enough to embrace continuous improvement in course development because it would just be too much work. So a modeling tool like Coursetune is a fantastic teacher's aid only if it actually helps the teacher. So just having tools for tools' sake doesn't really accomplish much. So modeling platforms are amazing. They help us to look at things, get rid of some of the detail in the course, but they can't add to the workload. They have to reduce the workload and leverage the faculty member, or else we're just not going to ever use them. So in this seminar, we're suggesting that by incorporating the alignment triangle into your regular routine of development and assessment, you should actually reduce your workload and achieve superior outcomes. How's that? That's pretty cool, right? I mean, less work, better outcomes. I like that. That takes a bit of planning, but as with all types of work, good planning pays huge dividends on the back end.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm really taking a risk here. I'm going to do a slide build. First rule of presentations is never try to do a live demo with a slide build, but I'm going to throw caution to the wind here and jump right in. So in this slide, what I'm hoping to show you is the linkage between your course activities, the assignments, the assessments, those kind of things, and your course objectives. QM is so strong on aligning our course objectives for everything that happens in the class. And this is the magic tool in Coursetune that lets us do that. Now, Oregon Tech is on the quarter system, so you can see that here's my first build. Wait for it. You can see that my MIS 311 class in the lower left is set up with 10 weekly modules, and those modules are arrayed around the course hub. So, and I have kind of a snip of some of the assignments I have in my class. This is out of the Coursetune menu we'll see later. And you can see where that one particular course, where it aligns with across the weeks and across the whole course. So Coursetune has this little activity or this little activity setup that lets us go in and map each activity, whether it's an assignment, an essay, discussion, whatever it is, and we map that to specific objectives. And this is where we make that connection, where we take our activities and we make sure they align with the objectives that we have. Now, practically the way that works out is that when you first do this, you go, oh, well, you know, either my objective was not right or my activity's not right, and I'm going to have to change those. So this is kind of an iterative process that takes us through that. So in this first step of this activity is where I assign my activities to the course. And then it takes me through a couple more steps where I add extra metadata about the course. And this provides a pretty rich background for people in the future, especially assessment people, to check these alignments and to make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing, not just writing it down on paper, but this actually kind of shows what we're doing. Now, this particular class is pretty unusual. It doesn't really happen like this, where I have 20 individual objectives across 7 weeks, where one assignment's associated with them. That doesn't really happen very often, but I just wanted to show you how that looked. So the key concept here is that Coursetune allows us to map our activities against our objectives, and then we compare that with the 5 QM standards that Janette told you about earlier. And that helps us to assure that we've got the alignments correct. So this single feature for me was enough to sell me. When I heard Diane in Denver talking about this, when she got to this part, I go, okay, that's it. That's all I need to know right there. I've been trying to do this for a long time, and everything I've tried to do to make this easy was just really clunky. So being able to make these assessments has been the most important thing for me in terms of being able to work on my class and then map that across multiple classes. So, so this is the wider view of the same course activity. So when you, well, let's see, I'll start the video and see how this works. So when you click down the activity list, you can see in the diagram where those activities, you know, like all assessments, all assignments, where they fit across the course. And of course, I found that a lot of my testing and stuff was really lopsided. So this helped me load level the course and take a look at how the assignments were spread. And it also helped me see just right away where I was loading the students up in one part of the term and then starving them out in another part of the term. Pretty cool, actually. Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears here and talk about something that's near and dear to the hearts of all the assessment people out there, and that is the mapping feature of Coursetune. Now, we looked at how we can associate course activities with the learning outcomes. Now we're going to show you how you can show mappings for extracurricular objectives that come from outside the course. So the idea here is that all of these objectives, whether they're industry objectives that we're trying to meet in our programs, or certification, or whatever kind of objectives we want, wouldn't it be cool if we can map all those onto our course and everybody, including the assessment people, could see that at a glance? Well, that's really what we're doing here. So I'm going to go down through this list. When I run this video, you're going to see that what happens is that I'm going to go look at the IACBE, which is the certification for our business department at Oregon Tech. And the IACBE provides us with some objectives, really, that they want us to accomplish. If we're going to be certified through them, we need to meet those objectives. So I'm able to put those objectives into my course, map them to the various weeks where I'm really fulfilling those, and we'll see how that works. So when I click on the map button, which is up here on the right, then I can see, you can see my IACBE, and here's the 5 objectives for IACBE. And as I click through those, you can see how they play out across my course and which weeks and which objectives are used. I can also look at the competencies that I've set up across my course and see where those objectives or those competencies are being satisfied across the course. Now, if you're like me, I imagine a lot of things about my course that just aren't true. You know, I'm thinking, wow, this is pretty amazing stuff. And then I look at the competencies that I expect people to have, and I see they're all clumped up in one corner, and they're not spread out, and they're not evenly applied. So this has been pretty important to me. The other thing I'm showing down here at the bottom is you can set up Coursetune has several different kinds of taxonomies. For this course, I happen to use the Bloom's taxonomy, excuse me. And so I can associate those verbs with various objectives around my course to see, am I really progressing? You know, am I really pulling out the slats in my scaffolding so that my students progress around the course and advance in their knowledge and their appropriation of the knowledge? This is amazingly cool for a course, but in the next slide, I'm going to show you how this works across multiple courses. So I'll just advance right ahead. I'll proceed without caution here. Whoops, that wasn't it. Okay, here, I think this is it. All right, so here are the 5 classes that I teach routinely. So imagine that this was your whole program, every class in your program, or you could do it by department as well, right? So you can have all the programs. And so the idea is we can drill down here any way we want to. So I'm going to go through this IACBE mapping again and click through it, and you can see how it maps to all of these classes that I teach, or at least according to Grant, that's how they're mapped, right? So notice that as I click through these, you'll see some of these have really kind of short, and that helps me understand where they fit. When I click into an individual class, then I can see how these same things, these same objectives fit within the class. So the idea here is I'm able to zoom in and zoom out however I want to, which is pretty sweet. I think, Janette, you got to unmute. There
Yeah, no, I go. Can you put up the slide across the multiple classes again?
I can't.
That's the one. Yes, thank you. So I really love this particular feature because I can look at the scaffolding not just in an individual class, but across my programs. So in especially one of my programs, I have many different teachers. We all have the idea of what we're putting in the course, but to really map out the skills across the program and look at it visually is a huge, big help to me. So I just want to point that out. I love that. I can kind of do it in my head, but seeing it visually is a really helpful thing. I want to wrap up the Coursetune leg of our triangle, and I want to go back for a minute and revisit why we went into the swamp anyway. Our goal was to figure out for sure if our students are mastering the learning objectives. and to keep track of the alignment throughout our courses. And we do think that having good alignment throughout our courses is a bit of a heavy lift. It takes a bit of effort. And our goal is continuous improvement. And at times it can feel like it's a daunting goal. And we do believe that QM has a very good rational set of quality standards to build our courses on. Coursetune is a great visual tool that does a lot of the heavy lifting in the design. We can review and modify our courses by looking at where we're falling short or where the scaffolding is not showing up across our programs. So the scalability of Coursetune is really attractive as a single modeling tool to communicate across a bunch of different stakeholders. So the administrators want to see our classes, assessment committees want to look at our classes, faculty in our department or department chairs want to look at our classes, and we can visually show them where we're at. Words are hard sometimes because every group has a different meaning for the word, but if you can show a simple visual model, it crosses and transcends the language barriers and allows every one of us to look at an image and kind of know what it means. As we learn to adjust to the realities of modern college teaching, we are becoming tool experts. Ideally, our LMS should have our design tools in it, our modeling tools in it, and we integrate it to offset faculty load so it's not so much work, and we don't have to spend so much time learning new tools. This wraps up the second leg of our alignment triangle. And now we're going to move into the last leg of our alignment triangle, which is live student data. The student data is really important. It's an important part of our triangle. We are not waiting till the course is over to see if a student learned each weekly module. We are measuring it live and then planning a quick intervention to reinforce or improve the student learning experience. I'm bringing back up this course improvement life cycle that Grant and I have here, and I want to look at the last three triangles in a little more detail. So the student is providing the live feedback that we get when we measure both their learning, direct measures, and we survey their thoughts. They tell us, very clearly what they think. Given our busy schedule, we often wait until the end of the quarter to do this, and Grant and I made a commitment that we would do this every week. So we were diligent at this, and we wanted to make sure that students were learning the objectives every single week, and then planning in real time student interventions, course modifications. Sometimes we just needed to add more course material or add specific instructions. Grant does this open mic night where people can show up and ask questions, and he records it and puts it in the LMS. But we really try to increase the feedback to the student. So we are giving feedback to them on how well they did. We give feedback to them on the survey results and on their direct measure results. And we share with them what we want to do to help reinforce that learning objective. So we're really making a connection to the students, and we're giving robust feedback on a regular basis to the students as we go through this. This close review of weekly data helps us to find out where we missed an area of alignment, whether it's the assignment or the grading rubric or a poor test question. This slide, this life cycle process, is a really important process to us. Grant is now going to show a little bit about how we actually collect direct data.
Okay, so this slide shows an example of the kind of data we collected each week. So this is empirical data that provides direct feedback from the students. Other tools we have in the course are used to provide indirect information that, when combined with this direct information, creates a more complete story of the effectiveness of the course design in satisfying the objective needs of the students. That's kind of a mouthful. Let me say that again. Other tools in the course are used to provide indirect information that, when combined with the direct information, which is this, creates a more complete story about the effectiveness of the course design in satisfying the objective needs of the students. Now, for simplicity's sake, this week's empirical data is shown in a spreadsheet, and your source of this kind of data may well come from your LMS reporting tool. So there's two assignments here that I'm going to attract your attention to for this 1 week. The first one's a quiz at the top, and then there's an assignment this week as well. So no rest for the wicked, I suppose. So you can see in the quiz, there's 15 questions lined up here. Each of us got a single point, and I've assigned each of those questions to one of the student learning outcomes that you see at the top. This was an interesting practice because if you're like me, I'm inclined to steal questions from the publisher test bank, and they don't have my SLOs in front of them when they're creating those questions. So often I had to throw those out, or I had to create my own. So this is part of that alignment, saying, do these questions really service the student learning outcomes? So on the right side, you can see the student data, right? And so what I did for each question is I put the student score down here. I just recorded this off out of the grade book and totaled it up at the bottom. And then since I'm an old school kind of guy, I want to see the percentages, how they did, right? And so you can see that there's one column in blue. So I've set myself a standard that says anybody that gets below 72% on a particular assignment or quiz, that I'm going to flag that and try to figure out why that happened. So you can see in this quiz, I have one student that got a 62. So that's my signal that I need to understand that. So it usually means an intervention of some kind, or I drop them an email, or sometimes I call them. Now this is particularly important in the first couple of weeks of the class, because the literature tells us that students who are wildly optimistic at the beginning and realize that this class is really tough, they get discouraged in this first couple of weeks and they just go under, because they kind of feel, especially in online classes, they feel really alone out there. So this lets me see right away who's floundering, and I engage them right away. And I try to set up a Zoom conference with them, or I haven't invited myself over for dinner or anything like that, but essentially I let them know I'm watching and I really kind of care. Now, I still lose some students in my classes, but I lose fewer ones. And some of these students I know I've saved in the class and retained them because I've done this intervention. So what I do in the right column is I set that same threshold. Now here's how I use this. So notice that in question number 1, only 58% of the students got that right. That's below my 72. So I flag that to say, I need to go back to that question and look at it again. Am I using clear language? Is it doing the right thing? Why are so many people missing that? Or is my lecture not covering that topic? Or, you get the idea. And I do that. And most of the time I find that the question's really not very good. My logic is weak, or my language is weak. And so I fix that in real time. And if it's really egregious, I just give everybody the point for that in that quiz. Now, that doesn't change their outcome much, but it tells them, it signals to them, I'm paying attention to what they're doing, and I'm not going to punish them for my lack of clarity. Another one I want to point out here is number 11. So everybody got 0.75 out of 1. This was a multiple answer question. That signals to me that I had a bogus answer there that I thought was true and nobody else really saw. So that sends me back to the quiz once again. Now let's look at the assignment. Whoops. Okay, here's the assignment. So the way I do my assignments is I have a rubric for each assignment. And on the left here, you can see the grading areas of my rubric. So out of the 25 points, for example, the introduction, 7% of that 25 is in the introduction, and 10% in the general topic, and so on and so forth. So I really did the same thing. You can see I have a student that fell below that 72%, so I flagged them, which means I'm now on the hook to go have some kind of intervention, whatever that looks like. And in this assignment, which was really a pretty easy assignment by most parts, I flagged this part called peer-reviewed articles. The students didn't do very well in that overall. So that tells me I either need to look at my lecture, I need to change my assignment template, or I need to maybe pick this up in a next lecture to sort of reinforce this. This tells me where there's a weak spot in my course. So, I've taught this course. This is the second time I've taught this course. Excuse me. I'm I'm having mouse troubles here. Okay, so this is the second time I've taught this course and using these kind of measures. And it's amazing to me how much fewer dropouts and how many fewer requests for clarification or complaints that I'm getting from my students, because those rub marks, those things, those shiny marks where the mechanism was beaten against each other before, when I fix those, it kind of worked forward. So as a side effect, this kind of work, this level of analysis helps me to visualize and clarify my weekly alignment goals and objectives. This is not easy to do. It's not easy to keep that global perspective when you're way down in the weeds doing the day-to-day maintenance on a particular class. So, this discipline, while it did cost me extra time this time, it's going to cost me less time each term, and I've already shown that that's true for this term teaching this same class. But one of the really interesting things that came out of this for me is that this discipline forces me to continuously evaluate the effectiveness of my course with respect to the student learning outcomes. Kind of a big deal. Now, this next slide is not the kind of slide you ever put up in a demonstration. This is a terrible slide, and nobody can read it. And but we put it back in here over the complaints of thousands who said this is terrible. We put it back in here to make this point that I don't know about you, but unless I write it down just when I'm thinking of it, there's no chance I'm going to remember all the detail at the end of the term. So I write it down, and this was my first attempt. So this was last term. Here's week 1, and this is a list of all the things that I found that I needed to go fix. Some of these things I fixed right away. You can see the little done statement here where I fix it there. Other things, these little left arrow brackets, PowerPoint changed my red stars that I love dearly into those. But some of those things I can't fix now, but I'm flagging them so the next time I do this course, I can go back and fix them. So this term, when I went and put up my course, I went and looked through all the red stars and fixed all those things that I thought were broken. So that's pretty cool. As I pay more attention to the detail, the students are having a different experience. So I'm of the opinion that this kind of close watch on the data generated will reduce my workload after a time or two. Anecdotally, I'm getting far fewer nasty grams from my students the second time around. And also, luckily, Coursetune has a better way to capture this kind of information than this hideous slide. And Janette will kind of take you through that, if I can.
Yeah. So Grant did an amazing job of keeping track of the notes, and I'm going to emphasize his point again, that each week that you do your direct and indirect measurements, keep track of what you're finding. And where we can do live interventions right away, increase and do more reinforcement, we do it. And where we have to wait till the next quarter, then we wait. But Coursetune has a neat feature. It has this feature that has a built-in task list. So I can put direct measurements and indirect findings right in there. And then I can invite my colleagues, other faculty members, our course designer, anybody that we want to say, here's the problem I'm having this week. And everybody can give input. This little log will be saved, and it can produce a to-do list. But I can invite other people to look at, here's the problem I'm having with this learning objective this week. What are your brilliant brains going to do to try to help me solve this problem? And then we try to put a live intervention or modification in right away if we can do that. So the purpose of capturing and analyzing all this data weekly is to help us know for sure that students are successful in the course. If not doing well on a learning objective, we need to act quickly to fix things that are weak or broken. Grant and I share one downside of our alignment triangle, and that is that it is more of a commitment on our part as instructors, and we have a greater role in accountability in assuring the success of our students when we look at it every week. It's also a humbling process. We share our gaps and weaknesses with the students each week. We say where things went well and where we didn't do things well. And even when we mess up on a test question or a grading rubric, we say it. And it ultimately all works together to improve the process. And I will tell you that it's also been a great experience working with another colleague on weekly measurements, because we can share the problems and come up with good solutions and make those permanent changes. So it improves the learning experience of the student, which is ultimately what we're hoping for. On this next slide, this is an example. This was taken from Grant's class, where in the finals week, there wasn't a learning objective in winter term actually written. And so we can track it to spring term, where Grant developed the learning objective and developed all the pieces if you go down into the weeds and look at it. But you can actually track your changes over time. You can track your to-do list. You can track whether they were completed or done. So it's a really nice feature. So to wrap up the whole alignment triangle, QM gives us the course standards to ensure quality. Coursetunes gives us the visual tool to map it out down to the weeds and out to the entire curriculum, or even across a campus of courses. Student data each week tells us what worked and where we fell short, which allows us the opportunity to add information, course material, but really conversations and feedback to the students, really letting the students know how well they did. And our goal really is to increase the value for the students and the learning experience. So we've talked about QM, Coursetune, and student data, and when we align all three of these together with the learning objectives, we feel like it does an amazing job of informing us on continuous improvement that's needed, but also at the end of the quarter, when we look at it all together, it can give us ideas on broader themes that need to be evaluated. Maybe we need curriculum changes, those kinds of things. Some key benefits of using our alignment triangle for continuous improvement are students get substantial and regular feedback every week. We are holding ourselves as instructors more accountable in a weekly learning objective way. And if a learning objective is not met, we know it. We are improving our courses into the weeds and into the bigger themes to increase the value to the students and hopefully increase equity and learning opportunities across the students. Taking the time at the end of the course to assess the broader themes can inform our decision-making, resource allocations, and curriculum changes. Now, I invite you to go into the weeds of your own course, and you can take this alignment as far as you want to go to improve the quality. The increased value to the students is what we're all aiming for. And I want to thank you on behalf of Grant and I for attending the seminar today. And we loved sharing our experience with you, this alignment triangle and the life cycle of a course. With any remaining time, we're now open to any questions.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Let me put my video back on too. We can run through some of these questions. Diane, are there some, I mean, a lot of these are Coursetune or OIT focused questions. Are there ones specifically that you think we should address in the time that we have left?
Yeah. Yes. So, I mean, there are several questions here. So let's look at what, one question is asking, what programs do you use to help you track student comments and how you change a course based on student feedback over time? I think that's a great setup for saying Coursetune. Is that accurate? Are you using anything else?
Yeah, I'm in my class. I have a weekly survey, you know, where I ask about each of my objectives, if I'm meeting those, and, you know, on a Likert scale. And then I have kind of this open beat the instructor up essay part down in that survey. And I take those things and I use those as part of my indirect feedback. And what I've learned, this is painful for me, but I have to assign a few points to that survey to get them to take it. So now I'm getting a really good cross-section of students taking that. And what I do with that information is I capture it and I roll it up and I give it to the students. I show them what the survey looked like, and then I tell them what I'm going to do. So I kind of put myself on the hook. I don't know that I would recommend that for everybody, but that's the way I'm doing it now. And then I take the results of what I learned from that, the analysis, and I put that in Coursetune in my tune list as a thing that I got to fix there.
And I think Grant and I will both say that we were really pleasantly surprised and humbled when students give so much indirect feedback. They tell us exactly what didn't go well and where they had problems. And we get a lot of comments back, but we just have that open survey and we let them tell us what they think. And then I think a big part is we do give that feedback back to them. We tell them where they stood on the direct measures and where they stood on the indirect measures, and where there's a weakness, we have a plan and we talk about it. We're going to try to do this. We're adding this course material, or we're adding this discussion, or we're doing something to address that learning objective did not get met.
Great, great. Thank you so much. So we have a couple of questions along these same lines. How often are students expected to submit assignments in your course? Is it weekly or bi-weekly?
It's weekly for me. There are a few weeks where they don't have assignments, but I'm out to punish every single student for getting a college degree. So I only have 10 weeks with them. So in a quarter system, we got a lot of ground to cover. So I do, and I usually do weekly. In some courses, I do weekly reading quizzes just to keep them honest. I don't really care so much about that, but I want to know that they're actually reading the material.
Great. And then the next question about students is, let's see, how much time is spent a week on grading and tracking student successes?
Oh, that's scary. You want to try that, Janette?
Well, I mean, obviously, if we're finding that we have some weak areas, and we definitely have some weak areas, then if we can repair it live and reinforce it live, we're going to put more emphasis in it. So kind of the pattern is we both try to get grading done by Tuesday of the week if they turn in assignments Sunday, and then we have time to plan the intervention for the next week. So we try to front load the week so that we have time to really look at the data and then discuss what would be the best option. And I like having as much feedback into that as possible, which means, you know, we're sharing our mistakes with each other all the time and trying to say, what should we be doing to improve this? And we try to do that at the end of the week before the next week. But again, we're sharing our mistakes with the students too. And at first we were scared to do that because students can be pretty in our faces sometimes, but we did it anyway, and it's been working really well. We share exactly our strengths and our weaknesses and what we plan to do to fix this and reinforce it.
So I can say that this last 2 terms I've used a spreadsheet to collect all the data, and that was really to figure out what the questions were, what I was trying to do. The LMSs are really great. You know, we're at Oregon Tech, we're moving on to a different LMS this year, so that'll be a challenge. But the idea is to figure out what the questions are, and then there's tools out there to help us get the answers.
Thank you so much. So one last question, if I might, about Coursetune. Let's see. There's quite a bit of information input into the Coursetune system, which is exactly right. Those visualizations are like the tip of the iceberg of all of the data and properties that we collect about each of these learning objects and the alignments that are associated with them. So what are the export options for faculty? This is a great question. At every level within Coursetune, you have your course level, your program level, your division level, your institution level. You can export that data into a YAML, JSON, or Excel spreadsheet. You can also use API integrations to push that data at each level into any system. And then, of course, we do have LMS integrations as well. The whole point of Coursetune is to, you know, gather all of these learning objects in one repository in a really sophisticated relational database, but then also to make great use of it by being able to visualize it differently and get those insights and be able to communicate it out. So our big goal is for you to be able to communicate it out to everyone that you need to in whatever format you need it to be. So thank you for all of the questions. This is great.
Thanks. Yes, thanks, and thanks Janette and Grant for that. And we are recording this, so we will share out the recording as we go. Yeah, Grant and Janette, thank you very much.
It was fun.
Yeah, take this last second if you have if you guys are active on social media, maybe tweet out a little bit of something that share something that you learned today with people outside of this area. Obviously, for more information on Coursetune, you can visit their website at coursetune.com. For more information about Quality Matters, you can visit our website at qualitymatters.org. Thank you guys very much, and have a good rest of the day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.